The wolf was already inside when Sable heard the door. Not knocking. Not scratching. The door simply swung open, and then there he was, filling the entire frame with his body, his fur dark and wet from the rain, his eyes catching the light from her single hanging bulb the way animal eyes do in the dark. Gold. Still. Watching her with the kind of focus that made her stomach pull tight. She had been awake since 2 in the morning. It was now close to midnight on a different day, and she was sitting on an overturned crate in the middle of her barn, stitching a cut on a stray she had found by the road. Her hands were steady because her hands were always steady when she walked. The rest of her was not particularly steady. She had a cold cup of tea on the floor beside her and a headache that had been living behind her left eye for approximately 4 days, and she had not eaten anything since noon. She looked at the wolf. The wolf looked at her. He was carrying something. Her brain registered it a bit late, the way things register when you are very tired. Something was tucked between his front teeth, held carefully, the way a mother carries something fragile. He stepped inside, leaving wet prints across the concrete floor, and crossed the space between them in 3 long, unhurried strides. Then he lowered his head and set the thing down. A pup. Newborn. So small it barely looked real. Not moving. Sable dropped the needle. She was on her knees before she made the decision to move, her hands already reaching, already touching, already reading the information that her fingers knew how to gather even when her brain was still catching up. Cold. Too cold. The kind of cold that meant time was not on anyone's side. She looked up at the wolf. He had not moved. He was watching her the way she had seen certain dogs watch humans they had decided to trust, which was different from the way they watched humans they had been told to trust. This was a decision. His decision. She did not waste time asking questions. I need light, she said, to nobody, to herself, to the barn. She reached up and yanked the cord on the second lamp, the one above the work table, and the barn filled with the kind of harsh yellow brightness that made everything look clinical and close. She lifted the pup with both hands, holding it the way she had read, and practiced, and prayed she was remembering correctly now that it actually counted. Her name was Sable Nkosi, and she was 26 years old, and she was not supposed to be here. Not here in this barn, not here at the edge of park territory, not here being watched by the Alpha King's wolf while she tried to save something that had already gone very still. She was supposed to be in her 3rd year of veterinary school, somewhere warm, somewhere that had more than one lamp and a supply of proper equipment. Instead she was here, in a barn she had claimed quietly and carefully over 18 months, with a collection of books and tools that she had purchased herself, with no title and no permission and no official standing with any park structure that would recognize her as anything. She had come here because the rent was low and the building was unused and she had nowhere else to go after she ran out of money and options and time. She had stayed because something in the land itself felt like it needed her, or maybe she had needed it. She still was not sure which was true. Possibly both. The park tolerated her. That was the whole of it. They did not speak to her much. They did not officially acknowledge her. She stitched up strays and the occasional injured park member who came to her quietly, without telling anyone, the way people seek help they are not supposed to need. She kept the barn clean and the supplies organized and her expectations low. She had not expected this. The wolf, whose name she knew, who everyone on this territory knew by sight, who moved through the park like a shadow that belonged to one person only, had walked into her barn in the middle of the night and laid a dying pup at her feet. Kale. That was his name. She had seen him at a distance a handful of times. She had never been this close. He was larger than she had understood from a distance, which was saying something, because she had understood him to be very large. His eyes, up close, were the particular gold of late afternoon light, and he was watching her with an expression that she could only describe, even to herself much later, as faith. That was what it looked like. Faith. The kind that does not hedge its bets. She pressed the pup to her chest. Her own body heat was the best thing she had. She began to move her hands in the slow, deliberate rhythm she had taught herself from a book, from a video, from a night 3 years ago when she had done this for the first time with a kitten and it had worked, and she had cried for an hour afterward from the sheer surprise of it. The stray she had been working on made a sound from the corner. She ignored it. The stray was stable. The stray could wait. The pup could not wait. Outside, the rain was still coming down. It hit the barn roof in an uneven rhythm, loud and then quiet and then loud again, and Sable walked in the sound of it, talking in the low steady voice she used when she needed something to hear her. Not words, exactly. Just sound. Just the presence of another living thing saying, I am here. I am paying attention. You are not alone in this. The wolf sat 3 feet away and did not move. He did not pace. He did not make noise. He sat the way Sable had only ever seen very calm, very certain creatures sit, with the weight of the world absorbed into his stillness rather than leaking out of it. She was aware of him the way you are aware of a fire in a cold room. He was there. He was warm. He was watching. She did not know, in that first hour, that this night was going to change the shape of her life entirely. She did not know that the person who owned this wolf, the person who had sent him or allowed him to come, was already aware that his wolf had left. She did not know that a decision was already being made about her, by someone she had never spoken to, based entirely on what Kale had chosen to do. She only knew the pup. She only knew her hands and the cold and the minutes passing and the rain on the roof and the impossible, necessary task of calling something back from the edge of a place it had not quite crossed into yet. The barn smelled like wet fur and antiseptic and something green from the herbs she kept on the windowsill. The single stray in the corner had gone back to sleep. Kale had not moved. Sable worked. She had no clock on the wall. She tracked time by the rhythm of her own hands and the changing sound of the rain and the weight of the pup in her palms, and she told herself what she always told herself in moments like this: keep going. Not because you are sure. Keep going because stopping is the only guaranteed failure. By the time the rain began to ease, she was not sure how long she had been kneeling on the cold concrete. Her knees ached. Her back ached. Her hands were warm from the friction of movement and cold from the air near the open door that Kale had never fully closed. The pup had not moved. But it had not gone further away either. There was something in the quality of its stillness that had shifted, some almost imperceptible change in the feel of it against her hands, and she followed that change the way she followed every small sign, because in this work the small signs were everything. She kept going. There was a moment, somewhere in the middle of all of it, when she became aware that Kale had moved closer. Not touching her. Not interfering. Just closer, the way a person moves closer to something that is going right. She noticed it the way you notice warmth increasing near a fire. She did not look up. She kept walking. And she talked. She kept talking, low and even, and she was not sure anymore what she was saying. She was saying, stay. She was saying, it is worth it. She was saying, there is more on this side than you know yet. Outside, past the barn door, past the edge of the territory, something was already moving toward her. She did not know it. She was too busy to know anything except the pup in her hands and the hands she was using and the next few seconds, and then the next few after that. That was how she worked. One next few seconds at a time. That was how she had always worked. That was the whole of who she was, and it was enough, and it was about to become visible to someone who had the power to change everything about what her life looked like from this point forward. But she did not know that yet. She only knew the pup. She only knew the rain. She only knew to keep going. The sound the pup made was not a cry exactly. It was thinner than a cry, more like a crack in a window, the kind of sound that makes you hold your breath immediately and wait to see if the glass holds. Sable heard it and went completely still. Kale heard it too. She felt him shift behind her, the air in the barn changing pressure the way it does when something large moves close, and she did not turn around. She could not turn around. She was too focused on the small body in her hands which had just, against what the last hour had been telling her was possible, made a sound. She waited. Another sound. Smaller. Then a movement, the tiniest twitch of a paw, and then something that could only be called a breath. Sable let go of the one she had been holding. She adjusted her grip without thinking, settling the pup into the warmth between her palms with the automatic care of someone whose hands know what to do even when the rest of her is shaking, which she realized. Her hands were shaking. That had not happened in a long time. She took one slow breath herself and told her hands they could stop now, and they mostly listened. The pup breathed again. Then again. She checked every single thing she knew to check. She went through the list she had memorized not from a teacher but from a book and then a video and then repeated practice in the dark with no one watching, because that was how she had learned everything. Alone, at odd hours, with borrowed materials and her own stubbornness as the only curriculum. What she found made the tightness in her chest is by increments. The pup was cold but warming. Weak but not failing. Present, in the particular way that mattered, which was to say, still fighting. She looked up. Kale was closer than she had realized. His head was level with hers as she knelt, and his gold eyes were fixed on the pup with an expression she had no word for. Not relief exactly. Something older than relief. Something that belonged to creatures who have been responsible for other lives for so long that emotion and duty have fused into a single thing they carry without naming. He looked at her then. She looked back. "I think it's going to be okay," she said. Her voice came out rough. She cleared her throat. "I think." Kale held her gaze for a moment that lasted longer than she expected. Then he pressed his nose very briefly to the top of her head, which was so unexpected and so gentle that she almost dropped the pup, and then he stepped back, and sat down, and became the version of himself that was purely still again. She turned back to her work. There was still a great deal to do. A pup this young needed warmth that stayed consistent, needed stimulation to keep the body remembering what it was supposed to be doing, needed monitoring through the hours when it would be easiest to slip back toward the quiet. Sebo knew all of this because she had read about it, and she had practiced on animals that survived and on some that did not, and she had learned each time regardless of which direction the outcome went. She pulled the old wool blanket from the shelf above the work table. She lined the wooden crate she used for small animals with it, building the kind of nest that would hold heat. She settled the pup inside and did not let herself stop moving, because stopping felt like the wrong thing, like setting something down before you are sure the surface beneath it is solid. The barn was quieter now. The rain had eased to the kind of light, indifferent drizzle that has given up the idea of force and is now just present out of habit. The stray in the corner slept on. The second lamp hummed above the work table. Kale sat. She worked. At some point she became aware that she was hungry, which she noted and ignored. At some point she became aware that her knees had moved past aching into a sort of numb acceptance of their situation, which she also noted and ignored. The pup was breathing. The pup was warming. The pup had made a sound, and the sound had been indignant, and indignant was the best possible sound a newborn could make because it meant the body had opinions about being here and intended to stay and argue about it. She was smiling. She realized this mid-thought and was faintly surprised. She had not noticed starting. It was somewhere past 2 in the morning when she heard the second set of footsteps. Not Kale. Kale was already here. These were human footsteps, and they were unhurried, and they stopped just outside the barn door, and for a moment there was nothing but the sound of the drizzle and the pup's small breathing and the awareness of someone standing in the dark outside the reach of her lamps. Kale did not react in alarm. He simply turned his head toward the door, and something in the way he turned told Sebo everything she needed to know about who was standing there before the person spoke or stepped inside or made themselves visible. She did not stand up. She did not stop what she was doing. She kept her hands on the pup and her eyes on her work, and she waited. "My wolf came to you." The voice was even. Not a question. A statement of fact being reviewed aloud, the way someone repeats a thing they are still in the process of accepting. She answered without turning around. "He did. He has never done that before." "I believe you." A pause. She heard him step inside. She heard the sound of the barn door being pulled not quite close behind him, not all the way, as if he did not intend to stay long enough to warrant the full gesture. "The healers told me there was nothing to be done," he said. That's why he was brought back. They had already given up. Now she turned around. He was standing 6 feet away, and he was not what the stories had made him. She had heard things, the way you hear things when you live on the edge of a park's territory, second-hand and piecemeal, assembled from other people's words. She had assembled a version of Aaron Voss in her mind from those pieces. The version in front of her was quieter. Younger looking in some way she could not immediately name, as if the weight he carried had not yet written itself fully on his face. He was watching her with eyes that were dark and very alert, and he was looking at her the way she looked at a situation she had not yet fully assessed. She returned the look. "They were wrong," she said. He looked past her at the crate. At the pup inside it, breathing in the small, regular rhythm of something that had decided to stay. His expression did not change in any dramatic way, but something around the edges of it shifted, some barely visible adjustment in the set of his jaw. "How?" he asked. "How did I do it? How did you know to keep going when they said to stop?" She considered that. It was a better question than she had expected. It was, in fact, the question. She had been asked many versions of this over the years, by people who framed it as doubt or criticism or genuine curiosity, and she had given many versions of an answer. This one she gave straight, because he was asking straight. "Because stopping is the only way to be certain it fails," she said. "Everything else is still possible until it isn't." He was quiet for a moment. Cale had moved to stand beside her, which she noticed only because the warmth at her left side increased. She did not look at him. She kept her eyes on Aaron, because this was a conversation that deserved attention. "You are the woman in the barn," he said. "I am the woman in the barn. You have no formal standing with the pack." "No. You trained yourself." "Yes. And yet my wolf brought the pup here and not to anyone with a title or a proper facility." "Yes," she said again. And then, because she was 26 years old and tired and had just pulled something back from the edge of gone, she added, "I think your wolf is smarter than your healers." The silence that followed was the kind that could go in several directions. She did not try to guess which direction it would go. She waited, which was the same thing she always did. The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Something adjacent to one. "What do you need?" he asked. "To keep it stable through the night." "More of the same," she said. "Heat. Monitoring. Something to do, honestly. I work better when I have something to do." "Then keep working," he said. He stayed. She had not expected that. She had expected him to leave once he had seen what he came to see, because powerful people generally left once their questions were answered. Instead he pulled the second crate to the edge of the light and sat on it, and did not speak, and watched her walk. Cale settled at her feet. The drizzle outside softened further and then stopped entirely. The pup breathed. In and out. In and out. Sable walked through the rest of the night, and the man who ran the territory sat in her barn without asking for anything or offering anything or filling the space with the particular noise that people make when they are uncomfortable with quiet, and she found, to her own surprise, that his being there was not unpleasant. It was like the presence of the wolf, in a way. Something solid. Something that had made a decision and was not second-guessing it. By the time grey light began to come through the gap at the top of the barn door, the pup was warm and breathing steadily and had made the indignant sound 3 more times, each time a little louder, each time more clearly an opinion being expressed to an audience it expected to take it seriously. Sable sat back on her heels and pressed her palms flat on her thighs and let herself be tired for exactly 1 moment. "It's going to be fine," she said. She was saying it to herself as much as to him. "I know," Aaron said. She looked at him. He was watching the pup with an expression she filed away without knowing yet what to do with it. Something careful. Something that had been afraid and was now on the other side of afraid, where things are very bright and slightly unreal. "You knew," she said, "before I said it." "Cale made the decision to bring it here," he said. "Cale does not make that kind of decision lightly." She looked at the wolf. The wolf looked back at her with the gold eyes that knew everything and explained nothing. "Good judge of character," she said. "The best I've ever known," Aaron said. The morning came in fully then, slow and grey and ordinary, and everything inside the barn was warm. She did not sleep that morning. There was too much to watch and she did not trust anyone else to watch it, which was a habit she had developed through years of being the only person available, the only one who would show up, the only one who had decided to care about the things that most people walked past without stopping. The pup needed feeding. This was the next immediate problem, because warmth and air were the first problems and those were now handled, but a newborn needs milk, and Cebu did not have what a wolf pup needed in her barn, and so she had to figure out something else, which was also a habit. Figuring out something else. Making the available materials into what the situation required. She had a bottle. She had a formula she had mixed once before for a very young dog left at the edge of the road, a situation so similar to this one in the mechanical sense that she allowed herself to feel briefly, quietly grateful for the universe's tendency to prepare you for things before you need to be prepared. Kale watched the feeding with the focused attention of someone who would have done it differently if he had hands. He was not critical. He was invested. Aaron had left before the sun was fully up. He had not announced he was leaving. He had simply stood, looked at the pup one more time, looked at her for a moment that lasted 2 seconds longer than she expected, and then walked out. She had heard his footsteps go quiet as they crossed the grass. She should have slept when he left. She did not sleep. She sat beside the crate and ran through everything she knew and everything she was not sure about and the distance between those two things, which had always been the space where she did her best work. Her phone, which she kept on the shelf above the herbs, buzzed twice. She ignored it. The stray she had been stitching when Kel arrived was awake and watching her with the suspicious, evaluating look of a dog that has been in enough difficult situations to know that the humans around it are not always to be trusted but is currently withholding full judgment. She gave it fresh water. She checked the stitches. She told it that it was doing well, which was true, and that things would continue to improve, which she believed. The morning passed in this way. Quiet work. The particular piece of a space where everything that needed to be done was being done, and no one was asking for more than what was available. She was hitting more formula when the woman arrived. She came in without knocking too, though with less of the physical authority that Kale had brought to the gesture. She was older than Sebo by perhaps 15 years, with the particular kind of face that has spent most of its life outdoors and has a collection of expressions that can be deployed like weather conditions depending on what the situation requires. The one she wore right now was something between curiosity and assessment. "You're the one from the barn," the woman said. "I am," Sebo said. She did not put the formula down. "My name is Claire Ward. I'm the head healer for this park." She paused. "I heard what happened last night." "Then you know more than I thought, given how recently it happened." Claire looked at the pup in the crate. She looked at it for a long time without saying anything. Sebo let her look. She had found over the years that letting people arrive at their own conclusions was generally more efficient than offering them the conclusions yourself. "We made a judgment call," Claire said finally. "You did," Sebo agreed. "You made a different one." "I did." Another pause. Claire pulled her coat tighter, which was either a nervous gesture or a cold one, and Sebo had no way of knowing which. "How did you know where the line was?" "I didn't," Sebo said honestly. "I knew where I was willing to stop, and that was further than where you stopped. That's all." "That's not nothing." "No," Sebo agreed. "It's not nothing." Claire looked at her then, a direct, uncomplicated look that Sebo returned. She had learned a long time ago not to look away from that kind of gaze. Looking away was interpreted too many ways, most of them wrong. "He is going to want to talk to you," Claire said. "Formally." "He already talked to me." "Formally," Claire repeated, with a slight emphasis that told Sebo the conversation in the barn at 2 in the morning was not what Claire meant. Sebo considered this. She turned back to the formula, testing the temperature against her wrist. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. Claire left. The pup made its indignant sound again, loudly, at nothing in particular. Sebo looked at it, and the pup seemed to look back, and she found the smile again, the same one from the middle of last night, the one that arrived without announcement. "You," she told it, "are going to be a lot of trouble." The pup breathed in and out in the steady rhythm of something that had decided trouble was exactly what it intended. The formal conversation, when it came, happened 3 days later. In those 3 days, Sebo did not leave the barn except to carry water from the standpipe and, once, to walk to the edge of the road where a supply truck dropped a package she had ordered 2 weeks ago with money she did not particularly have. The pup ate at regular intervals and made increasingly loud and opinionated noises and had begun to move in the determined, slightly uncoordinated way of things that have figured out they have a body and are interested in seeing what it can do. Kale came every day. He did not stay long. He arrived, checked the pup, looked at Sebo with the gold-evaluating eyes, and left. The third time she found herself saying, without particularly planning to, "It's still good. You don't have to keep coming." Kale sat down. "Or you can keep coming," she said. On the second day, 2 pack members she had never spoken to appeared at the door with food, which was unexpected and which she accepted without making a point of it, because making a point of things generally slowed them down. She ate everything they brought, because she was very hungry, and she said thank you, and they left, and she returned to the pup. On the third day, Aaron came back. This time in the daylight. This time with no rain and no emergency and no cover of darkness to give the meeting the texture of something accidental. He came in the mid-afternoon when the light through the gap in the barn roof was the particular warm yellow of late summer and the pup was awake and moving around its crate with the enthusiasm of something that had very recently discovered limbs and intended to use all of them. He stopped just inside the door and watched the pup for a moment. "It's improved," he said. "Considerably," she agreed. She was sitting on her usual crate, cross-legged, with a notebook on her knee where she had been writing down observations in the small, neat handwriting she used when she was being precise. He pulled the second crate to the same place he had put it 3 nights ago. He sat down with the ease of someone comfortable in his own body, which was one of the things she had noticed about him the first night too, the absence of any unnecessary performance. He did not take up more space than he needed. He did not try to make the space adapt to him. He sat, and was present, and looked at her. "I want to make your position here official," he said. She looked up from her notebook. "My position? You are operating on park territory with no formal standing. That is a gap I should have noticed and addressed before now. I've been here for 18 months. I know." He said it without apology or excuse, which she respected. "It should have been addressed sooner." "I didn't ask for it to be addressed," she said. "I didn't need the title." That's the argument people make when they've learned to walk around the absence of something that should have been given to them, he said. She was quiet for a moment, because that was accurate in a way she had not expected from this conversation. "What would official standing look like?" she asked. "Access to proper supplies. A space that is actually equipped for what you're doing. Recognition from the park that your work here is legitimate and that you are under our protection." She absorbed this. She turned the notebook over in her hands. "And what would you want from me in return?" "What you're already doing," he said. "With better tools and more support." She looked at the pup. It had managed to climb partially up the side of the crate and was regarding the edge with the expression of something working out the physics of a next step. "I have conditions," she said. "Tell me. I make my own calls. If I say something can be saved, I don't need committee approval to try. If I say something needs a different approach than the established healers recommend, I need the standing to implement it without having to argue for it every time." Agreed. "I don't answer to the healer hierarchy. I work alongside them, not under them." He did not hesitate. Agreed. "And I need a door that actually locks," she said. "The latch on this one is broken." The corner of his mouth did the thing again, the thing that was close to a smile but not quite there, the thing she had seen once before in the dark of the early morning and fired away without quite knowing what to do with. "I will have someone here today," he said. She nodded. She looked back at her notebook. She wrote something down, more to give herself a moment than because she needed to write it. "Why Kale?" she asked, without looking up. "What do you mean?" He came to me. He made that choice. You said he hadn't done it before. She paused. Why did he do it? The pause that followed was long enough that she looked up. Aaron was watching her with a careful, alert expression she was beginning to recognize as the one he wore when he was thinking about how much to say. I don't always know what Cale knows, he said finally. I've stopped trying to be ahead of him. I try to follow where he leads and trust that his reasons are good. That's either very wise or very unusual for someone in your position. Probably both, he said. Cale, who had arrived at some point in the last few minutes and settled near the crate with the full authority of an animal who considers this space to already be his, made a low sound that was not quite agreement and not quite otherwise. Sable looked at the wolf. The wolf looked back. Okay, she said. To the wolf, to the man, to the afternoon light coming through the gap in the roof. To the 18 months that had brought her to this barn and the night that had changed what the barn meant. Okay. Aaron repeated. Okay, she said again. Official standing. Proper supplies. Autonomy. A walking door. He stood. He had the quality of movement of someone who does not linger past the end of a conversation, which she appreciated. I sent Claire with the paperwork in the morning. She's going to enjoy that, Sable said. She suggested it, he said. That surprised her. It showed, apparently, because he looked faintly satisfied in a way that was not unkind. Claire knows good work when she sees it, he said. She's been in this field long enough that the title stopped mattering to her. Results are what she follows now. He was at the door. The pup, she said. He turned back. It should stay here for at least another week. It needs consistent monitoring and it's responding well to this environment. She looked at the pup, who had now successfully achieved the edge of the crate and was peering over it with an expression of wild ambition. It also seems to like Cale nearby. Then Cale stays nearby, he said simply. She nodded. He left. The pup made a sound. The sound was loud and confident and very clear about itself. Sable caught it, gently, before it could attempt the drop to the floor, and held it up, and looked at it eye to eye the way she sometimes did with the animals she had pulled back from the edge, in the particular way that was not sentimental but was honest. You are here, the look said. You made it. Whatever comes next, the hardest part was that. The pup regarded her with the gold eyes that it had gotten from Cale, or from Cale's line, or from whatever ancient, tangled blood ran through the animals of this territory, eyes that looked like they already knew things. She set it back in the crate. She picked up her notebook. She wrote down everything that had just happened, in the small, precise handwriting she used when she needed to be accurate, because she had learned that the things that change your life tend to look ordinary while they are happening, and it is only later, reading back through the record, that you can see the shape of what shifted. 6 weeks later, the barn had a lock on the door, a working power outlet on the north wall, shelving that had been installed by 2 pack members who did not say much but did the job carefully and correctly, and a supply cabinet that Sable had organized herself on a Saturday morning while the pup investigated every corner of the space with the thorough attention of something that considered the world its personal project. His name, she had learned through Claire, was Kit. She had not named him. The pack had a naming tradition she was not part of, and the name had come from somewhere in that tradition, and she thought it suited him. Kit was not small anymore, not in the way he had been. He was still young, but he had the wide-pawed, oversized look of something in the middle of becoming, and he moved through the barn like he owned it, which in some sense he did. He had claimed every corner. He had strong opinions about the arrangement of things and expressed them, loudly, when the arrangement was not to his satisfaction. Cale still came. Not every day now. 3 times a week, approximately, in the late afternoon, and he would settle near the door and watch Kit in the way of an older animal that has accepted responsibility for a younger one without being asked and does not make a production of it. Sable had a routine now, a proper one. She had supplies. She had standing. She had, for the first time since she left university, the material conditions to do the work the way it was supposed to be done rather than the work the available materials could be shaped into. Claire came on Tuesdays. She came in with the particular efficiency of someone who respects time and does not waste it on preamble, and she and Sebo talked about cases and methods and the places where their training agreed and the places where it diverged, and they disagreed sometimes, directly, without either of them making it into something it was not. It was, Sebo thought, the closest thing she had had to a professional relationship in years. Aaron came on no particular schedule. This was the thing she had noticed and not said anything about. He did not come every day, did not come at a fixed time, did not come with an agenda that she could identify. He came, sometimes, in the mid-afternoon when the light was warm. He came, sometimes, in the early evening when the temperature had dropped and the lamps were necessary. He came in and sat on the second crate, the one that had become in some unspoken way his, and he watched Kit or he watched her walk or he sat with a quiet that was not uncomfortable. He did not always speak much. When he spoke, he was direct in the way she had come to expect. He asked her things, real questions, the kind that were looking for actual answers rather than confirmation of things already believed. She answered the same way. She asked him things too, when she had them, because she had decided early that the dynamic that would work between them was the one where neither of them managed the conversation to avoid friction. She asked him, one evening in the 7th week, why the pup had been alone when Kale found it. He was quiet for a moment. Kit was asleep near the cabinet, taking up considerably more floor space than he had 6 weeks ago. His mother did not survive the birth, Aaron said. And the rest of the litter was gone too. By the time anyone realized Kit was still there, some time had passed. How much time? Enough that Claire thought it wasn't worth attempting. Sebo absorbed this. And Kale found him. Kale found him. And Kale made a decision. He looked at the wolf, who was near the door in his usual position, watching all of them with a steady gold attention. He always knows where the edge is. Between what can be saved and what can't. I have never known him to be wrong about it. He wasn't wrong this time either, she said. No. She was quiet for a moment. He wasn't just there for Kit, she said. When he brought Kit to me, he wasn't only making a decision about the pup. Aaron looked at her. He was making a decision about you too, she said. About whether you should know I existed. The pause was long enough that a less patient person might have filled it. She waited. Yes, he said. And you followed where he led. I tried to. She nodded. She looked at Kit, asleep on the floor with his white paw stretched out and his breath rising and falling in the rhythm of something that had no memory of being anything other than healthy and present and loudly opinionated about the world. Good judge of character, she said. Aaron was quiet for a moment. The best I've known, he said, the same words he had used on that first morning, but the weight in them was different now. Fuller. Like a sentence that has been waiting several weeks to be the right size. Outside, the season had turned. The late summer was now early autumn, and the light in the evenings came at a different angle through the gap in the barn roof, longer and more golden, and the temperature in the mornings had the particular quality of air that knows winter is coming and is beginning its adjustments. Sebo had written, in her notebook, on the first page of a new section she had started in the 4th week, the things that change your life tend to look ordinary while they are happening. She had written, below that, in smaller letters, Kale knew. He always knew. She had written, below that, nothing. She had left the page blank for a while, not because she did not have things to write but because some pages need time before they are ready to be added to. She thought she might know, eventually, what went there. She thought it was not a thing she needed to rush. Kit woke up, assessed the room with the gold eyes that cut through everything, found it satisfactory, and made the indignant, opinionated, alive sound that had started the whole chain of things. Loud and clear and full of itself. Sebo smiled. Kale's ears moved. Aaron looked at the pup and then at her, and the thing that was not quite a smile settled into something close to one, and stayed there. The barn was warm. The door held. Everything that had survived had done so for a reason. That, she thought, was the whole of it. The whole of everything worth keeping.